Hey guys, welcome back to the Blue Podcast. This is the Gradient Show. Today we're going to be giving our thoughts on Andor Season 1. As usual, I'm joined by Ben, a familiar favourite on the Gradient Show. Ben, how are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Good, that's what I like to hear. Harry has been on the Purple Show before. This is his first time on the Gradient Show. Welcome back to the Blue Podcast, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Happy to be back.
Good stuff. We're very happy to have you back. That last one we did on the Purple Show absolutely flew, by the way. Relatively flew compared to how we've been doing, but clearly you've just got the raw appeal that everyone's looking for. So yeah, we're delighted to have you back, and also a brand new face on the channel, James, massive Star Wars nerd, by the way. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm doing great, mate, and happy to be on the show, and looking forward to just talking about Star Wars.
Well, that's what we're here to do. We're all very, well, as you can tell by me, perhaps a little overexcited about the prospect of talking about Andor because, let's be honest, this was a fantastic season of television. This was exceptional. I don't think anybody really went into it expecting anything less than that. Despite, obviously, they're taking a character that's died in one of the films that wasn't even a main part of sort of the prequels, the sequels, the originals. So potentially there's room for not much to happen, but they smashed it, in my opinion. I want to hear about your guys' favorite moments. James, let's kick it off with you. I've spoken to you the most about this. You're the brand new on the channel. Yeah, what was your single favorite moment from season 1?
I mean, maybe it's a bit of a cop out of an answer, but like that finale was just exceptional. Like it, I don't think I've gotten so emotional over anything Star Wars related as before, and the whole because before the last episode sort of started, like, I don't know about you, but I wasn't exactly sure where it was going. Like, obviously there was a funeral, but I couldn't really see how it was going to pan out. But what happened was just fantastic, and the way that scene built up with like the that sort of like slow funeral procession with the like townspeople, the ferrets, and they were like playing all this like funeral march type instrumentation, and it all came together, and then it just kept building and building and building, and there was like the tension was just getting to that point, and then it finally, it was released, and when Martha's saying like, kill them bastards, and like it was so good, and like you could tell that something was about to go off, and then when it did, it was exceptional. And I mean, maybe it's the most fresh part in my mind, but like, wow, like what an end to the show, or of that season. Sorry, but yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely, mate. I mean, I think we can all agree here the finale was exceptional. We have some very interesting comparisons to draw with the finale of this and other shows' finales, like The Mandalorian, for instance. We'll touch on that later. Ben, we'll go with you next. Do you have a separate favorite moment, or do you just agree with James and just the finale?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to sort of pick out one. I mean, it is the finale was fantastic, and I think it's sort of like you say, you didn't really know where it was going, but you knew everyone was gonna turn up at this funeral, and you're like, what's gonna happen? Like, what's gonna transpire? Like, you didn't know where it was gonna go. You knew everyone was gonna be there, but what was gonna happen was just up in the air. And sort of, yeah, it was just, and like you say, it was like a microcosm of the whole series. It's been building up to this moment, and the whole episode is building up to that moment, and it was very, yeah, it was very, like you say, tense. But no, it is interesting as well, because they have because we know where the story is going, but they managed to keep it feeling fresh and with new characters, despite knowing we know where it's going, we know what's going to happen, but it was new. It was something. I mean, even the Mandalorian, which I like, with like especially second season, it was like, oh yeah, well, this is cool. But it was really like it was completely fresh, even though it was like it's stuff we know that's what happens. Like we know it's happened, but it was really good. Yeah.
No, you're right. Go on, James. Go on.
Oh, I was going to say, like, I think having kind of characters that we've never touched upon before was actually like a massive like release of creativity. Like it allowed them to kind of do whatever they wanted and just sort of explore, like, you know, we're told in the films the Empire is evil. We've never really seen that. And so like you're able to get like proper into how like totalitarian and just brutal their regime is, and just explore all these characters who I presume at some point like they're all gonna die. But like it's I mean obviously we know that Andor does, but like the fact that we've never heard about Luthen before, we've never heard about Vel or whatever, like it's a massive, like, I don't know, joy, I suppose, as a writer, just to sort of explore how this rebellion could have started. I think it's brilliant.
No, you're right, and I actually I thought it was really interesting. You both touched on it there about how it's original characters and how they have so much to work with because of excuse me, because they're not tied down by, well, obviously they're tied down by Andor has to die, but they're not tied down by what happens before that and the start of the rebellion. I did like though that Tony Gilroy, the show's creator, he did just include the Death Star in that end credit scene, just as sort of like a little reminder, like, yeah, it's all looking good, but we know how this ends. Like, Andor will die. It's inevitable. Just enjoy the ride while you're there. Harry, I hope we've not taken all the good talking points away. What was your favourite moment from
No,
this season?
don't you worry. Mine's quite different to the two that have been touched on before. Probably my favourite two episodes on the show were 8 and 9. I really loved watching the Imperial prison on Narkina 5. And favourite character for me, probably Kino Loy. Great performance, I thought, from Andy Serkis as well. But favourite moment is definitely after their little coup in that prison where he takes the comms and gives this sort of half-hearted, limp speech. And then Andor looks at him and goes, "Is that all you've got?" And he sort of pours his heart out on this channel, and you see down each of the levels, these masses of people all begin to riot and tear their way out, up until the point where they actually get outside and they realise they're in the middle of the water and Kino can't swim. I thought that was brilliant.
It was heartbreaking, but fantastic at the same time.
Doesn't that kind of sort of epitomise the show as a whole and almost the rebellion? Like, one of the consistent themes is everyone's doing their part to take down the Empire, and they know that they're doing it for others to appreciate it. They'll never be. That's something that Luthen touched on a bit, because I think his speech in, I think it was episode 9 or 10, but his speech to the ISB agent rather, that was exceptional. And that was kind of like, look, I'm never going to be the one to see the light of day when the Empire doesn't reign over everything, but he's going to do everything that he can to make sure that they're not in charge for the future generations. And I thought that was so evident throughout the show by the amount of people that they just killed off. Like, we'd be introduced to a character one episode and then they die 1 or 2 episodes later. Obviously the main ones stick around, but I just really enjoyed that, almost the inevitability of it, and that they
the
can
deaths
do all
were
they
also
can.
meaningful as well. You never thought that they were just sort of executing characters and also just another one they're going to kill. They all sort of touched you in different ways as well. And it felt like their actions did have consequences. So when they were all talking, especially in the prison, back to it, like we would rather die trying to get out than die serving the Empire. It all does have quite a deep meaning beyond just let's try and escape. Because we've seen prison escapes in Star Wars, and especially in The Mandalorian, they use them quite a lot, and they can feel a bit samey, but this one had a bit more emotion, and it felt like there was more on the line than what there normally was as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll come back to, I'll give you my favorite point quickly, because it's a lot more shallow and sort of just excitable than the three of you, because you've really dived into the emotion of the show. But the episode, I can't remember the specific one, where Luthen is being about to be captured or drawn in by an Empire ship, and then he whips out like this thing that just kills the tractor beam and then does the double laser spin to take out 2 TIE fighters. I watched that and I literally I got up and shouted. Like, that was so cool and so unexpected, because obviously we've seen him in action before, but we don't know like he was that sort of on the ball with it, and that sort of capable. Yeah, so that was my favorite moment. James, you spoke to me a while ago at the beginning of the show about a pattern you saw emerging in terms of the way they were structuring the episodes. It was sort of in 3-episode increments. Do you want to touch on it? It was really interesting. I didn't pick up on that initially.
It's very patient show. It's not all action, and it over the course of the 12 episodes, it was like clearly defined into like 3-episode arcs, which I just thought was really nice because it was like having kind of 4 sort of almost full-length films when you think about it, but back to back to back. Obviously, you started off with the sort of Andor kills those 2 guards, and then it leads back to him being sort of searched for on Ferrix, and sort of that end of the 3 episode is him escaping with Luthen and sort of embarrassing Cyril and Cyril, what's his name? Cyril Khan, that's it, yeah. So, that's the first part, and then the second one is the prison break, the bank sort of heist, and you go into the sort of planning behind it. You see like Nemik's writing this manifesto, which is really interesting, especially how it crops up later in the series. And then the next 3 are obviously in the prison. He gets captured. And I like how, for example, like the Kenobi show, and like Leia gets captured, and then like the next episode, she's free. And it's sort of, where's the tension? Where's the stakes? It's never really there. Whereas this, like, the sort of the hopelessness of being imprisoned it's made so clear and evident. And when you sort of learn that they're never getting out, and then for them to finally get out, it's again like a massive release of tension, and it's done well over 3 episodes. And then obviously the last 3 are the sort of events leading up to the funeral, and then the I suppose riot breaking out. And probably it's like one of the first examples of like actual rebellion, because the robbery was seen by people over the like throughout the universe as an act of rebellion, but they were more using it, we need funds to kind of achieve what we want to. But people like Marva sort of saw that and goes like, I'm a rebel now, and it changed her opinion that sort of people could stand up to the Empire like that. And I just thought it was lovely, like just sort of patient and like well thought out, well written storytelling that sort of had these 4 parts to it, and it was just really rewarding to just like engross yourself in it. And and each of those 3rd episodes is like a massive success, like release of tension, and it was just fantastic.
No, that was nicely put, mate. Ben, I'll come to you. How did you find the pacing? Because I know sometimes you can be a little bit pessimistic, especially with the TV shows, mostly Marvel. I'll admit, but a lot of people. James, we talked about this before, but Star Wars Theory, one of the biggest content creators, Star Wars related on the internet, he had problems with the pacing of the show. Ben, and even Harry, if you have a different opinion to James, how did you find it? Because obviously James and I as well just really enjoyed that they took the time to set it up.
Yeah, I didn't mind it at all, really. I thought it was, it was a nice change of pace, really. Everything seems to be like full throttle. Like you say, I think next thing's the next thing. Like in Kenobi, like it was the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I mean, it was kind of a bit mixed with Kenobi, but they really landed it with the ending fight in that show. But this one, like the sort of the change of pace a bit more. I don't know if it relaxes the right word, but like you can like take your time and sort of think about it a bit and stuff like that. It's it's nice. Like you say, like the different arcs, sort of the first episode when he kills those 2 guys, that sets the tone, and then you can kind of build upon that because it shows he's not part of the rebellion, but he's willing to do what it takes. Because usually in like those sort of things, like the hero is always like, oh, I'll spare them, but he was like, nah, I'm killing them. Like, and you usually like when they're like spare, you're like, oh, just but like it showed that it was different in that sense. And then obviously each arc had the sort of it was a different sort of it was kind of showing different sides of the rebellion, and it was nice to sort of it was building up. It was building it. It was building the sort of the base of the rebellion, but within sort of the show, and so it was nice.
I think sorry to sort of cut in, but like that slow pacing. I don't think it was. I think it was perfectly well paced, but it sort of, at least with myself anyway, I found like I was drawn into some of the finer details that maybe wouldn't have been focused on, or like I would have missed if it was a more like action-packed sort of show from one episode to the next. Like you sort of, over the first 2 episodes, you saw how, and I've forgotten his name, but that boyfriend of Bix, and like he clearly distrusted Cass because he thought that, you know, maybe there was something going on with them again. So when there was that chance for him to report him, he did. And then that obviously led to the security people coming over to Ferrix, but also led to him being killed. And then in a similar way, there was, I think in the first episode, and I don't think we ever learned his name, or if we did, I missed it, but there was a guy who came up to Cassian and was like asking him for money, like he owed him from some betting thing maybe, or maybe he just like took a loan out, but I don't think we knew why. But clearly Cass owed this guy money, didn't pay him, and then he was the one who then was like informing, or like he told the Empire in that final episode, like he's hiding in that clock tower. And again, it was like, if it was a more fast-paced show, maybe that kind of detail would have been missed, but it made sense that he was the person to like rat him out. I don't know, it's just little details like that, like all throughout the show, which I don't know, they just made me happy. Like I was like, this is brilliant.
No, you're right, and it's nice when they're dotted around like that. On the subject of sort of moments that, well, almost loose ends in effect, because you talked about one there that came full circle, and it was almost it was a nice payoff to have for almost the fan just concentrating and watching. In terms of the loose ends, one of the first moments that took place in the show was Cassian looking for his sister. That's never paid off in this season. We'll touch more on sort of what we're looking to see in season 2, but Harry, we'll go to you. Is that the sort of thing that you think will be paid off in season 2? Would you like to see that storyline explored more? Do you think there was a reason they didn't?
I hope not, to be brutally honest with you. I hope they leave that. I think we all want to see Director Krennic. I thought he was an excellent character in Rogue One, and I think it'd be really cool to see his progression through the Imperial ranks in the second season of Rogue One. Well, of Andor, not of Rogue One. But the whole sister thing, I think, was a plot progression. I'm sure she probably will pop up, but it gets the ball rolling. It explains why he's sort of roaming the galaxy, and then eventually leads him to... I always felt watching the show, Andor kept on going through a series of unlucky events, and then all of a sudden stumbled up as the start of the rebellion. It was one thing after another for him. He got caught up in the exchange with the 2 guards, then he got caught in prison, and then it's just one thing after the other, and the poor guy, he couldn't catch a break no matter how hard he tried. But I think the great sort of message throughout that is that at the beginning, he wasn't looking for it, but it found him. And at the end, he felt like he wanted to help rather than he was a part of the help. So obviously he was paid for the bank heist, but then towards the end, you sort of felt that as a character, if he were to be offered that opportunity again, wouldn't be necessarily asking for money, because he'd want to be a part of the bigger picture. And he finally did believe in what he was fighting for. So I think there's lots of places they could go with season 2, but I hope we get more of what we've had. And we've always seen sort of looking for someone. It's quite common in Star Wars, isn't it? They were looking for Obi-Wan Kenobi, they were looking for Princess Leia, then they were looking for Luke Skywalker in the films. So hopefully he's not wandering the galaxy looking for his sister, but if he is, I'm sure he'll be caught up in some rebellious activities along the way, as he found himself in this season.
No, I'm sure we will. Yeah, you're right. I was a little taken aback. You were just like absolutely abruptly, no, I don't want to see more of his sister. But no, that makes sense. One of the things it's had going for it is that it's not followed the standard tropes of Star Wars like you described there. Direct Krennic would be fantastic to have back. I think it's Ben Mendelsohn, the actor, isn't it? He's obviously fantastic. Always plays the villain somehow, but yeah, he does a great job. He would be amazing to see back. And there's plenty of others almost from. I'm assuming you guys have all seen Star Wars Rebels, the TV show. Yeah, so there's plenty of places they can take it. Almost seeing the build up to that, because obviously Rebels takes place a while after this show is set. But yeah, James, what would you like to see in season 2?
Well, I think what Harry said about Cassian looking for a sister. And it sort of reminded me how, like, I think a lot of the characters in this show, like they've got their own rebellion within them. They've got their own fight. They've got their own reason for sort of getting involved. And I just, this isn't exactly answering your question, but I think I like how these different people have their own different angles. And we saw a bit of it in the events leading up to the heist, where you sort of got an introduction to the different members of the team. And I'm forgetting his name, but the guy who was like an Imperial officer and who then was engaged or whatever to this local Aldani woman, who then was killed as part of the Empire's actions on Aldani and then turned against. And it was sort of over the course of the whole season, we saw how Cassian changed from being a rebel without a cause, or just someone who's like completely self-centered and just like trying to do the best for himself, to someone who becomes far more selfless and looking out for others. And so I think that kind of that angle of like everyone has a different reason for like wanting to rebel against the Empire, and also seeing all the different sacrifices people have made. Obviously Luther made that wonderful monologue about all the things that he sacrificed and put on the line. You saw with like Mon Mothma how she detests like the sort of traditional ways in which she was brought up, because she's stuck in this marriage she doesn't like, and she's like a politician, but because it's in the Empire, like she can't actually serve the people that she wants to. And she sees her daughter like falling in love with the traditional values, and she hates that, and she sort of, but also she's a mother and she wants to care for her child, but then she also, I suppose, is putting her child's like mental health on the line by sort of allowing her to meet the son of that banker. Again, I've forgotten his name. I'm terrible with this. But like that's her sacrifice, and it's like that goes against all her morals, but she knows that ultimately it is for a greater good. And I think season 2, it's just going to be like we're going to get a bit more structure, maybe, to sort of how maybe what like Cassian and Luthen end up doing together. But I'm interested to see with what happens with Mon Mothma. And I'm also interested to see what happens with Dedra and Cyril. Like, I find their relationship really odd, but not necessarily a bad part of the show. I just find it really weird and bizarre. But I think Dedra's probably going to get some kind of demotion after, the sort of fiasco that happened at the end of the series. And it might be that her and Cyril are sort of form some kind of, I don't know, agreement together where they're both looking for Andor, and it's not strictly controlled by the Empire. So I don't know. I'd be interested to see what they do.
No, it's interesting. Harry, you mentioned to me a few days ago, actually, you really enjoyed some of the Mon Mothma stuff, didn't you?
Yeah.
Do you want to touch on that at all?
I just thought it was because obviously at the start of the sort of 3 core films of the Star Wars universe, she is the head of the rebellion, and she's just sort of there in those films. You don't know anything about her, why she's there, who she is, where she's from, but she's there and she's important. And despite all these series and films, no one's ever touched on who she is. She's just Mon Mothma, head of the rebellion, and we have references through sort of the animated stuff. But I thought it was really excellent, and the portrayal of her was also really excellent. To see her struggle being in the position of power she was in society, in the Senate, of forming this rebellion, because of where did the rebellion get its money from? These sort of logical questions you have whilst watching the core films and so on, is they have all this equipment, they have all these huge ships, but they're always portrayed as sort of scavengers, but they've somehow amassed this army that can compete with the finest of the Imperial fleet. And she is a part of the reason why, and I thought it was really good how they sort of managed to address that and also get a bit technical with it as well. So like she's trying to cover her trails, she's trying to not be revealed. It talks about like she's trying to find alliances, she doesn't know who she can trust, and it must be a very difficult situation for her to maneuver. And I thought that whole dialogue was very well done.
No, yeah, completely agree. Ben, I don't know what your thoughts are on it, because I think Harry's touched on that nicely in terms of we've never really heard anything about her, which she's just always been there, as Harry said. And it's nice to actually see her character broken down and actually see the vulnerabilities that are there, because before that, she's just this strong leader of the rebellion and nothing more.
Yeah. I think it's not just her, but just that each of the characters who are part of the rebellion. It just shows that they have to get their hands dirty for the greater good. The your morals. It's a difficult one, because obviously your morals are saying all this, but for the greater good, you got to do that, and it's that sort of the conflict in all the characters who in order to actually get anywhere, you've got to get your hands dirty, whether that's against, even if it's against your morals and your conscience. And it's that sort of difficulty that they're having to battle with throughout the whole show, especially in her case. And but in her case as well, the most like morally grey area of all is letting her daughter, basically marrying off her daughter. Like she like completely like she in normal circumstances she'd be like no chance, but in the situation she's in, she's like, oh, I'll consider that, even though it goes against her every moral and every thought of a conscience. So yeah, that's good.
No, you're right. It's like, go on, James, go on.
What makes that worse is like she knows that it won't be good for her because she's lived that life, and she like she's in this position now where, you know, like I said, like she's in this marriage with a husband that she doesn't love, and she sort of, even though she's a senator, I think you get the impression that she doesn't enjoy the like sort of privilege of it almost, and the sort of having to hold up all these values. And like you saw a thing where like before a meal and like they were saying effectively like prayers or whatever, and it sort of, I don't know, it sort of gave me like very like Christian vibes of that sort of, you know, sometimes you might see in like a sort of traditional like American family and they'd like say grace before a meal. It kind of gave me that vibe. And I think she knows that probably her daughter at some point will hate her for this, but like she's prepared to do it because she knows that she has to. Yeah, just fantastic.
No, yeah,
in a weird way.
Yeah, no, I get you. It's interesting to watch just the subtle dilemmas, like moral dilemmas that are taking place. Because it's, I mean, the directing is obviously fantastic, and the acting we'll touch on in a minute is exceptional. But we sort of can see all of this happening from subtle moments. There doesn't even have to be dialogue. Sometimes we can just see. Like Genevieve, somebody I can't remember the actress's name that plays Mon Mothma, but we can just see subtle changes in her in her demeanor that sort of tell you this story of how conflicted she is about A, she's got to save the galaxy, and B, she's got to sacrifice her daughter and her own morals to do so. It's a fantastic sort of toss-up that we see played out. Whilst we're on this subject, I'm going to go around and ask each of you the best acting performance you saw. I have Google on hand if we can't remember actor or actresses' names, so don't worry about that. I just want to hear about best moments from the actor or actress that you just thought, yeah, that was it for me. Ben, let's kick things off with you, mate.
That's a tough one.
There were a lot of good performances. Let's not discount that.
Yeah.
Side characters,
yeah, very tough.
I can pass it off to James or Harry if you'd like.
You might have to. Yeah, I mean,
don't worry, mate. We'll pass it off. We'll come back to you. James, we'll kick things off with you then, mate.
I'd preface this by saying, like, there weren't any bad ones. Like, all the characters are so believable, and I think that's credit to the writers for sort of, concocting like a storyline that is so logical. It's so like filled with ration, and it makes sense. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think Andy Serkis as Keenan Loy, like, fantastic. Like, the sort of, I think, when you first meet him, like, he's prepared to just serve out his sentence and it will be fine. But you get the impression that somewhere deep down he has this doubt, and when it's revealed to him about what happened on the other level, and the doctor tells him that everyone got killed, and it just like sparks this change in him, and it's like you see the character like realize that, and yeah, it's obviously incredible acting talent to be able to sort of convey that emotion through. I also think that I think Kyle Soller is the name. He plays Cyril Khan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, because it's such an odd character, and he's like a sort of incel, for use of a better word. Like, he's really weird, but like it's played brilliantly, and he's still like a really believable character. And the way he like interacts with his mother, and in the like second or third episode when he has to give that speech to the men when they're like going to go to Ferrix, and it just falls flat on his face because it's sort of, he's got no like social skills, he's got no like social presence. Like, that's fantastic as well. Like, I don't know, I sort of enjoyed his performance, even though it's one of the maybe less, I don't know, significant characters to some extent.
No,
but
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good way of putting it. He's not the main character at all. I mean, he definitely is a focus for the first 3 episodes, but after that, he sort of just fades into the background and keeps cropping up. I think the actor does a fantastic job of just making this character so desperate to serve the Empire and just have some position of authority that he'll strive to any length to do it, including like a lot of people would expect to be killed in that position by Dedra's character, by Dedra, for sort of consistently demanding and disobeying the Empire's rules. A lot of people would, you'd think, might be killed off for that. But yeah, it's just his absolute persistence and need to be in a position of authority. And James, I think you put it nicely. That's explored in the relationship between him and his mother very well.
It almost felt like it almost felt like he had a weird fetish for the Empire at points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See it on his face that he was sort of itching to be near anything to do with it, and it made it sort of really uncomfortable viewing in a really sort of interesting way.
I like, that's fantastic. That's so good.
No, you're right. It is like a fetish for the Empire. Yeah, you're spot on. And it was almost, he's that character that he's going to be the little snake that comes in at the end and does something to. I mean, we saw it with Dedra. He was able to get her away, but he's that slimy character that you instantly don't like.
It's like,
fantastic job at that. Go on, man.
It's like is that loner recluse guy who's looking for something, who's latched onto the Empire for something to belong to, and because he's a loner and a recluse, like, he's got nothing else to do basically and to focus on. So that's literally his sole focus, and it's just completely bizarre and weird. It's like it just if you look at it like from the outside, you're like, that's just stupid. But to him, like it makes total sense because he's not got nothing else.
It makes him really dangerous as well.
Yeah.
Because like he's prepared to do whatever to, and I think like Dedra, like he's clearly like obsessed with like climbing that imperial ladder, as it were. Like I think the other officer or whatever who was like on a similar level to her, who used to have control of Ferrex, he said something about careful how fast you climb the ladder, or I'm paraphrasing massively. Whereas Cyril just like, I don't think he's even bothered about that. Like he just loves the Empire and he wants to do anything that he can. And he's also like completely obsessed with Andor. And he was maybe that person in the final episode that you thought maybe the actual Empire won't get him, but Cyril might, because he'll do something weird and it'll put him in that position where he's able to sort of halt everything and bring everything to a stop. But obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, interesting character.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Were there any other standout acting performances anyone wanted to touch on, or I mean, Harry, you mentioned Andy Serkis to begin with, so if you want to.
Yeah, I think that's been slightly touched on. I think Fiona Shaw as Marva Andor as well. I think her monologue at the end was delivered excellently. I think for such a powerful moment of the series, the culmination, the grand finale, stood up there or projected up there, and you could feel the emotion through the screen. I thought that was great, really good.
Yeah, I think I mean, it was what we were talking about previously, but Genevieve O'Reilly. I think, you know, the acting for showing that conflict and that moral sort of, that moral conflict in her was really good. Like when she got into into a car or whatever in the car, and she's like, "Oh crap!" Like, you know, she's like, "Oh, what am I going to do?" Like sort of thing. And she really like, there's no sort of dialogue, but she just with her, you know, expressions was like, yeah, I'm, you know,
you're absolutely right. And I think one scene that stood out to me in particular, more about the actual character and the way that the Tony Gilroy actually like portrayed that character and just how clever Mon Mothma is when she's in the back of that taxi with her husband. This was in the final episode, and she goes to the driver and says, obviously, can you mute us? Can you whatever it was? I'm paraphrasing again. And like knowing full well that he's not going to mute them and he's going to listen in because he's actually a spy for the Empire. And then she starts talking about her husband's gambling issues, which she knows is going to be fed back. And she knows that will actually explain where the income is coming from if she has unusual sources of income. I just thought that's brilliant. And it's a small detail that a lot of people won't notice, but it does such a good job at showing how intelligent her character is, that she'll think up this elaborate lie based on a hunch that the taxi driver is listening, based on a hunch that he will then report back to the Empire, and that will explain the entire basis for the rebellion's money. I thought that was fantastic. That was another moment. That was another brilliant moment from the show. That I mean, the lasers just took the cake for me. But
the lasers.
Yeah. Speaking of things you might miss, all of the Easter eggs in Luthen's museum as well. It was riddled with them. You had the Gungan shield, a Starkiller armor, I think, was hidden in the back. And I even saw on Instagram one of them was like the Mayan calendar, which George Lucas thought the world was going to end in 2012, as predicted by the calendar. And so they threw that one in the background there as well.
Love that.
It's riddled with them.
That's very good. I saw as well they had it's the first time in live action they had a Jedi Temple Guard. They had the mask of the Jedi Temple Guard. That was quite cool. I think Starkiller was the best one there. Harry, I'm sure you'll appreciate this more than I, because I'm not massively aware of the lore of Starkiller, but he's quite a big character. He was in a video game or something.
He's not canon yet, Tom. Don't get excited.
He's canon now. Surely he's canon now.
No.
All right, I'm being put in my place by the trio of Star Wars nerds.
It's like I don't know. It's like some shows like a review sort of like these sort of things like Canon Watch. And they're like, what is this? And they go through it, and it's like ridiculously in depth.
No, I think that's Harry. That's Harry's role for this. But anyway, I think the final question that I wanted to touch on is quite an interesting one, actually. So obviously we've talked about how great this finale was. One of the other Star Wars shows that's sort of renowned for, well, I mean, renowned. It's been the best Star Wars show they've come up with live action before this. The Mandalorian, season 1 and 2, both had finales that could be considered outstanding, but for different reasons to this. Obviously, as a refresher, in Mandalorian season 1, we had Giancarlo Esposito come out with the Darksaber. The first time we ever saw that live action. That's pretty jaw-dropping. And then season 2 of The Mandalorian, in the finale, we only just, had Luke Skywalker, Bo-Katan, the Darksaber. There's some absolute fan service moments in season 1 and season 2. I'm going to ask each of you, but how does this finale compare in terms of which one did you enjoy the most? Which one did you think was the best? Because fan services can be incredibly enjoyable, and then it can almost become a sour taste in the mouth 5 minutes after you finish watching it. I think we saw that with off topic, but Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. James, we'll start with you. We'll just group season 1 and season 2 of The Mandalorian together into a viewing experience. Which one was better for you? The finales of The Mandalorian or the finale of Andor?
I'm gonna have to go Andor. It like I properly cried in the finale of Andor because it was so it was just so emotional, and I think just with the score and in the first, or not the first, in the third episode, when the people of Ferrix and they're hitting the tools on the walls, and there's that guard and he says to Marv, what's that sound? And she says that's what a reckoning sounds like. But it's when it goes quiet that you need to be worried or need to be scared or whatever she said, and then it goes quiet and then it all kicks off. That was brilliant. And then in the finale it was similar. You had the music was getting louder and louder, and you had that speech, and you knew that the sort of tension was just it was ready to explode, it was ready to burst, and when it did, it was just fantastic. And I don't know, I was lost for words, and I just got so caught up in the moment of it all, and it was fantastic. And I think Mandalorian, and for example, I started watching the Mandalorian with my dad because I said it was something Star Wars to watch. You don't have to know too much about Star Wars. I was it's well written, and it's kind of more about this relationship he has with someone he was originally meant to kill, but then they end up forming a bond, and they care for each other, and it's sort of, that's what the show's about. It's about their relationship. But then I'd sort of agree that the best moments are those sort of moments of fan service, and unless you've seen the Clone Wars, you're not going to know what the Darksaber is. Why should you care? I have seen the Clone Wars. I thought it was brilliant, but not everyone has. And sort of, obviously, people know who Luke Skywalker is, but it's sort of almost maybe cheapened by that kind of reliance on an older character. And don't get me wrong, I thought that the season ending of season 2 of Mandalorian was fantastic. I loved it. It was brilliant. But then I think with Book of Boba Fett, and they had those 2 episodes, and then Grogu just immediately goes back to being with Mando. That kind of almost ruined the ending of season 2, because I felt like that's what season 3 was going to be about. So now I'm kind of less bothered about season 3, whereas this was just it was brilliant, and it tied up the first season so nicely, but there's still so much that can be explored in season 2. And on top of that, I think it was more emotional, maybe.
No, definitely. And I knew that you would go for Andor because so James and I are housemates, and James has been raving about every single episode that's come out. So I had a sneaky suspicion you'd go for that. Harry, I'm very curious to hear what you'll say, because it is almost a toss-up between absolute enjoyment in the moment, and then just sheer appreciation of how good something is. So I want to hear your thoughts.
I think season 2 of The Mandalorian is sort of unrivaled in Star Wars finale hierarchies. I don't think despite the excellence of Andor, anything will probably ever in TV touch the feelings I felt watching that episode. The anticipation. I remember coming down early that morning to watch it before I'd seen anything online, sitting downstairs and pressing play, thinking, what on earth is going to happen? You'd read online, will this person show up? Will this person show up? And the moment you see that X-Wing sort of flying across the screen on that little TV in the like cockpit of the ship, you think, is it? You don't know, but is it? And then you sort of see someone get out as a hooded figure, and you're like, okay, they've done it, and they did it superbly. You got a Luke Skywalker hallway scene. It's prime Star Wars. He's got his green lightsaber. He's got his hood up. He's embracing the light and the dark as he force crushes these dark troopers, and he progresses through. You then get the emotional opening of the door where the Mandalorian eventually takes its helmet off to say goodbye to Grogu for the first time. I understand where James is coming from when he says the sort of emotion of that scene is dampened by the 2 episodes in the Book of Boba Fett that was sort of shoehorned in. And I think, I do sort of share that opinion, but not to the same extent, because at that time, that was a huge moment. And bringing Luke Skywalker back from 3 films of, in my opinion, and I'm sure many others' opinion, murder, was excellent.
I think if you ignore Book of Boba Fett, then they're about level with each other. But I don't know. Book of Boba Fett was really ass, and it sort of I did not enjoy that.
I'll be honest though, having listened to both of you now, we're going to go to Ben in a minute, but having listened to Harry there, I got chills just remembering watching that sequence where you see the X-Wing come in. I was getting chills just listening to you there. So I'm sort of heading towards a side of Mandalorian at the moment. Ben, we'll come to you. Which one was your favorite?
I think it just depends how you're feeling. Really, it's whether you like which characters. Basically, what do you care about? Do you like? Do you not really like? You might just be like, oh, it's cool, but I'm not really fussed about these new characters. I care about these characters. Or you like, I like these characters, but I want to see something new, something fresh. So it just depends. Just depends what. And then both are not. There's no wrong answer. Both are good, but it just depends which one you care about more. I mean, I really did like the Andor finale, because I remember going into it thinking, I really hope he goes and rescues Bix. I really hope, and then he did it. I was like, yeah, but because I mean, I would think it was sort of obvious that he would, but you're like, I'm not sure, but it might happen, but it probably will. But yeah, I mean, the finale for Mandalorian season 2 was fantastic, and like you say, Book of Boba Fett was crap. I mean, it was it was a strange one, because I remember they were saying, oh, it's basically Mandalorian season 2.5, and I was like, well, just do Mandalorian 3 then. Yeah, like or if they'd done those 2 episodes and not got a full season, just do a couple of special episodes, just like mid-season episodes, like here's a couple of like just a few prep episodes for season 3 or whatever. You don't have to shoehorn it into a Book of Boba Fett season. And then that way, if they really want to do a Book of Boba Fett season, they can actually make it about him. But I mean, it was a bit naff, really. But I mean, it does. I guess it wouldn't have cheapened it in a sense if they had done it that way, because it's kind of it feels like it should have been a Mandalorian thing that showed him coming back. But like I say, at the time, it was, it was ridiculous. Like, what? Nah, that's, you're thinking this is crazy. Like, it's a toss up, really. I think it just depends what you care about. And I mean, it might be recency bias or nostalgia bias. I don't know. Like, it just depends how you feel at the time. You know what I mean? But yeah. It's a toughie, but I couldn't really choose one, really.
That's very helpful, mate. Very helpful. So I
There
think
you go. There you go.
we'll leave it as a tie, actually, because I'll leave my opinion up in the air because those are two exceptionally well done finales that make you feel a load of emotions for very different reasons. But I think what we can take away from this is that Andor has been an exceptional season of television. All we can hope for is more of the same in season 2. And whilst we want to see some characters that we love and have been fantastic in the past, we want them to keep true to what they've done in this season, with the originality of it and making the best of these brand new characters. We want to see that continue whilst almost integrating some of our favorites, like Karen touched on earlier.
I think.
Go on, Ben.
Yeah.
No, go on.
This only is like last point. I think that what they shouldn't do is, I mean, they didn't quite flood the second season Mandalorian with characters that we already knew, but I think they should be wary of that, of flooding it with characters we already knew, because we've got these new characters that people will care about now. So you should still focus on them. You may, you can sprinkle in a cameo here and there, but still focus on those characters, because Mandalorian, it wasn't quite flooding, but it was getting to the point where it was like, I still liked it, but it was like you just coming away from those new characters that you've introduced just a little bit. It was like on the edge, just a little bit. I mean, I still liked it, but it was like just because it just feels like it's just moving away from it slightly. But yeah.
No, I understand that, yeah. And I mean, to be honest, for me, one of the best bits of the Mandalorian season 2 was just seeing, like, waking up, going, oh, there's a new episode. Oh, which cameo are we going to see this time?
Yeah.
It's fun at the time, but then you're right. Sometimes you can get overwhelmed with it. I mean, seeing who do we see back to back? Ahsoka and
those Bo-Katan
back to back, and then Bo-Katan. We had like 3 of the largest cameos that we should see in that entire show's running in back-to-back episodes. But yeah, I digress. I think we'll wrap things up for here today, boys. Thank you very much for coming on, James and Harry. Ben, as usual, it was a pleasure. If anyone's still here, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like and consider subscribing. Might as well. And we'll be back next time something Star Warsy comes out. I don't think we'll do Tales of the Jedi, but next time there's something quite big in the cinematic universe, we'll bring you guys a video. But on that note, cheers, and we'll see you next time.